Good morning and welcome to the little apartment on the prairie. I thought I'd just talk for a minute today about something that's kind of on my mind, which is kind of what we can control and what we can't control and how important it is to know the difference. And I have a story about that, and then I'll tell you why I'm thinking about that story today. Many years ago, I was a social worker and I worked with kids, mostly teenagers, sometimes younger kids, that had problematic behavior. A lot of the kids got referred to my program from the juvenile court system for getting in fights with other kids or beating up their parents or something. I also got kids referred to me from the school that they were fighting at school or, hitting teachers or in some cases threatening to blow up their school when there was no real proof that they, were building a bomb or anything, but they were making these kinds of threats that are not okay. They were kids that couldn't manage their feelings, they couldn't manage anger, they were impulsive, they didn't have the best social skills, and they were angry kids. So we taught them stuff like anger management, communication skills, problem-solving skills, stuff like that. So one day I had this group of teenage girls, and we did this mostly in a group setting, and the kids they were complaining about all this stuff, and I was listening to them, and I need coffee, and it seemed like they felt like they didn't have control over a lot of things that really you do have control over. Like, you can only control yourself. You can't control other people. You can't necessarily always control how you feel, but your feelings are still your responsibility. You can control how you react, you can control how you behave, how you respond to things. You're in control of you. So these kids felt like they didn't have control over those things. And so I gave them all a sheet of paper and told them to draw a line down the middle and make a list of 5 things they could control on one side of the page and 5 things they could not control on the other side. And what I realized was that these kids had it backwards. They would write down that they could control their parents, that they could control their boyfriend, all these things that you can't control. And so they were, I guess, very frustrated, and so were the other people in their lives, because they were busy trying to control the other people in their lives when you can't control that. And people don't like it when people try to control them, and it was interfering with their relationships with people and how they got along with people and how they interacted with people. But they felt like they didn't have control over themselves. And that's actually a scary thing when you feel like you can't control your emotions, you can't control your behavior, you just feel out of control. So that was interesting to me. Later I did this exercise with other groups, and I found that invariably with teenagers, they felt they had it backwards. They thought they could control things that they really can't, and they felt they had no control over things that they really did have control over. I did the same exercise with parents of teenagers in the program, and what I found with the parents was that they felt they had no control over anything. I remember one woman, we did this exercise the first day she came to the group, hi Whiskers, and she just made this really long list. She had way more than 5 things that she could not control. She couldn't control her kids, her money, her job, her behavior, her feelings, her husband, what she spent money on, how much money she made. She couldn't control if her house was messy or not. I mean, some of the things were true. She couldn't control her kids. That's part of the problem. Her kids were out of control. But while you can't really control teenagers, you can influence them greatly, right? Like, you can't necessarily force them to go to school. If you've ever had a kid that absolutely refused to get on the school bus, when they're in kindergarten, you just pick them up and carry them on the bus. When they're in high school, that doesn't work. But you can make it really boring and unpleasant to stay home. Like, you take away the TV and the computer and their phone and whatever, and it's no fun to stay home, and you can offer rewards if they go to school, and then they decide on their own to go to school, so you can really influence them a lot. Anyway, this one woman felt that she had no control over anything. She couldn't think of one thing to put on the side that she had control over. And And I talked to her, this was like a 15-week program, and I talked to her at the end of the program. And I said, do you remember doing that? And she laughed and she was like, yeah. And I was like, can you just name some things for me right now that you do have control over? And she was more accepting responsibility for her life. She could name things. But all the parents had a really hard time in the beginning of the program naming things that they could control. They just felt out of control, which made them angry and unpleasant to be around. So between their kid trying to control their parent and the parent feeling angry and out of control, obviously they weren't getting along. Okay, so the whole point to that story is I'm thinking about this car and how it didn't go the way I wanted with the bank. Maybe we can fix it. Maybe we can't. Maybe I'll end up not having a car for a few months. That won't be the end of the world. I have neighbors that would give me rides places I need to go. The thing that would make me the saddest about not having a car for a while would be that I won't be able to get over to my friend's house where I'm gardening. And I really enjoy gardening, and I put a lot of time and effort and work and whatever into that garden. And I want to be able to garden. But you know, things don't always work out the way we want them to in life. And a lot of times it seems like life is a whole series of things not working out the way we wanted or the way we planned. Isaac, come here and I'll give you a treat. Don't whine, come here. So, I mean, a lot of times that just seems like that's what life is. It's things not going the way we thought they were going to go. And it's how we adapt to it. Because I can't control that there was a car accident. I can't control that my car is totaled. Do I have control over like what my credit score is? Sort of. I mean, I'm sure there are things I could do to improve my credit. There's not like something I can do today that's going to make my credit a lot better, you know, but there are probably things I could do to improve my credit. So I could talk to somebody at the bank and figure out what that is and do that. That's going to take a while. I can control how much money I put down on the car. I can't do anything to get more money right now, but you know, I could save money for 6 months and then have more money to put down on a car. You know, it's important to look at what things you have control over and what things you don't. And just a lot of times life seems like it's a whole series of things not going the way you wanted. And what you can control is how you adapt to that. And that's hard. It's hard when things don't go the way you want. And sometimes you grieve. You know, when I took on disability, I loved my job as a social worker. It was so sad for me that I couldn't do that anymore. It's been 17 years since I left that job, and I still dream about it. Sometimes I'm still doing that job in my sleep. Not too, maybe once a month. I mean, not super often, but it's not rare. It's something I loved. It's something that was important to me. I couldn't control the fact that I became ill. I can control what I do with, you know, to an extent, what I do with my life now. There are limits. I'm not going to go to medical school now and be a doctor. I'm not going to become an astronaut. I'm not going to, and I don't want to do those things. But, you know, there are limits that are outside our control, but there are lots of things that are within our control. And so I try to focus on what I can do and what is in my control more than what's not in my control, because that's what I can do something about. And right now, a lot of the world is dealing with things that are not turning out the way they wanted, from little things like my car, or someone who, you know, seniors in high school who wanted to have a graduation and a prom and they didn't get to have it, to people who are dealing with the fact that they're not going to watch their kids grow up, or they're not going to grow old with their partner, either because of the pandemic or because of police brutality. There are lots of people who are realizing that life is not going to be the way they thought it was, and they have to adapt. And you go through a grieving process. You don't grieve as much for a car as you do for the loss of a loved one, obviously. But sometimes when you find out things aren't going to be the way you wanted them to, you grieve. And it's okay to grieve. You don't want to get stuck in that. You have to like move on and look at, okay, so I didn't get to do whatever that I thought I was going to get to do. What's next? And you move on. And that's kind of how life is. So I'm trying to get some housework done today. Work is often a good antidote for, I don't know, feeling a little down. I'm not saying it's like a cure for clinical depression, but you're having a bad day, get some work done, it can help. Working it off is probably better than sleeping it off. So I'm trying to have a busy day, get stuff done. Obviously Whiskers thinks it's time to cuddle. Sassy's busy chewing up a cardboard box. I don't know why. And it was raining a lot earlier, but now it looks like it stopped, so Isaac probably wants a walk. I hope you all are having a good day. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't yet. And I will talk to you all later.